big impact on the States and it'll have a big impact on the rest of the world. Good evening to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Erol, let's start with you first. Republicans abroad will be looking keenly at the inauguration of Donald Trump for his second term in the White House. What do you think we can expect on the day itself? Do you think any change in particular will be signalled? What tone do you think will be set from the off? Different to last time, maybe?
Yeah, I think things will be very different. Last time Donald Trump came in much more as a political outsider. He didn't have an established team. He was probably not as prepared to actually win, unlike this time where he expected to win. So it's all about the people he's bringing with him, the cabinet he's brought in, the fact that he's not going to be appointing former Republican sort of operatives, but new operatives. We have a day one emphasis on energy independence, border security, rolling back regulations, finding détente with Russia and in Ukraine and in Israel as well, and then just restoring accountability to let's say government institutions and finding where they can and can't be eliminated. And I think all of that is going to combine for a very exciting, very progressive start to the Trump presidency.
And Errol, do you think it'll be striking a more optimistic tone? I think the term American carnage was used in the last Trump inauguration speech. Do you think he'll be striking a more positive tone this time around? Because that's the tone you're striking. Do you think he'll be saying something similar to what you've just outlined there?
I do think so. And I think that a lot of the challenges he's had to face in his personal life, whether it be the assassinations attempts or being justice impacted for the last 4 years, are going to really shape who Donald Trump is and what he's bringing to the White House. He's come in with an attitude of, I'm willing to forgive, I'm willing to forget, I want to go forward, I want to lead, I want to be a president for all Americans. Right now, 51% of the working class voted for us. We are the party of the majority. The 8 of the 10 richest counties in America voted Democrat. They are the party of the rich. The things have changed, certainly, in these demographics, and Donald Trump needs to embrace it because his constituents are working class, regular Americans who he made big promises to, whether it be no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, and he's going to be expected to deliver that. So that's a positive message to all Americans. It's what he campaigned on, and it's what we hope to see going forward.
Okay, let's bring in Patti Shields from Democrats Abroad. Patti, I mean, you've seen Trump 1, Trump 2 coming up. Errol says there that there'll be a more positive, optimistic tone struck. I mean, will you just be treating this as day one of a 2-year period where the Democrats will have their opportunity to have a go at the Republicans in an election again, or do you hold out any optimism or any hope that this might be different?
Well, I mean, I do agree in what Errol said that I think, the election was won on the economy. It certainly was winning on, the agenda that Trump and Republicans set out to deliver for the working class. And I do think, the Democratic Party, is really needing to look at the lessons of November. They lost the economic narrative. They kind of went to intangible idealism versus, tangible table talk. And, I do think Democrats, in looking at how they can rebuild the relationship with what historically has been core voting constituencies, they need to hold Republicans and especially Trump to task on, the promises, especially around the economic agenda.
So would you expect then the Democrats, Joe Biden talked about this being a global battle between authoritarianism and Democrats. Would you expect the Democrats to, I suppose, be influenced by the norms set by Trump and be more inward looking and concentrating on those pocketbook issues and less concentrated on America's role in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think Democrats know that, there's been a lot of, rhetoric, especially around, friends and foes, within, Trump's speeches. I think everyone acknowledges that the role of the U.S., as a place of peace, and as a leader I think the talks about tariffs have concerned a lot of countries, in terms of trade relationships with the U.S. Certainly, climate and clean energy is important to the world. So I think Democrats will keep that, in mind as well.
Right.
It's going to be a
And I'm sorry
balance.
to cut
Yeah.
across you, but could I ask you just a question that, and I'll come back to Errol on this, because it's I suppose the point at which maybe the Democrats' view of America's role in the world and America's view of how families will be able to afford the food on the table kind of coalesce is the one on tariffs. It affects both America's bilateral relations with other countries and also the price of goods within America. Do you think that's an issue that Democrats will major on if tariffs are rolled out early?
Yeah, and I think really pushing, people understanding, what tariffs are, who pays the tariffs, and measuring and seeing what that inflationary impact is. I do believe that, there is an agenda and a need for the US to create, manufacturing jobs, and certainly there's opportunity, in the job portfolio that even, Joe Biden put in place in terms of climate and clean energy, but like if tariffs are imposed and we're getting things that we don't make, at the end of the day, the consumer is going to bear the burden of that, and that could exacerbate, those table talk issues again, because the impact is direct to the
All
consumer.
right. Errol, I mean, I don't know whether you've shared the same lifelong commitment to tariffs as President Trump has in your lifetime in the Republican Party. But I mean, if there's an obvious inflationary impact of tariffs early on, when and or if they are imposed, could you see them being dropped by the administration?
Oh, absolutely not. I couldn't. I think that tariffs and the America First trade policy are tools that we plan to use to create fairness, not isolation. And free trade is not the same thing as not free for all trade. The focus on leveling the playing field in the past, American workers, our constituents, especially union workers now, were left behind by trade deals that prioritized multinational corporations and their offshore accounts, and tariffs are a negotiating tool. I have a master's degree in economic history. If you were to, say, reduce these tax burdens domestically on the American worker and increase tariffs, they would become more of a consumption tax. As well, you would rapidly be able to offer grants to bring companies here. You'd be able to offer amnesty periods and godfathered in periods for companies to change to work within the tariffs. And so the goal is to have a negotiating tool for companies that are trying to access the largest market in the world and make sure that the American worker is protected inside of that. And as long as the worker is protected, and these are not critical industries to our national security, then we're happy with any and all free trade. Oftentimes, America has signed trade deals that are unfavorable to the American worker because of America's hegemonic sort of position in the world economic system. But that doesn't mean that the world as it always was is going to be the world as it is going forward. And so a pro-tariff, pro-business idea that's going to bring negotiation is actually probably going to be better for all the bilateral agreements in the world.
Okay,
we don't want to have all of these multilateral agreements that we've had. We want to have very specific, targeted, focused trade deals, and tariffs are going to be part of that negotiation process.
Okay, but I suppose trade, from a European point of view, to kind of bring it into local terms, trade is a European Union competence. So any trade in Ireland is governed by the European Union. I mean, I'll stick with you on this, Errol, and I'll come back to Patti for a response as well. There are a lot of American companies in Ireland. They export to the US. I mean, will it be favourable to US companies if they're being hit by tariffs exporting from Europe in the area, say, like pharmaceuticals, chemicals and the like?
No, it won't be favorable, and that's, I think, where negotiations going to come in. When it comes to Ireland specifically, Donald Trump is probably much more interested in all of the tech money that is being stored offshore, that we see it stored offshore in Ireland, that he'd like to bring home. When it comes to things that are necessities like pharmaceuticals and these other products, there's a lot more room for negotiation. So I think a lot of it's going to have to do with American big tech companies in relation to the local economies that you'll be seeing. And yes, that could have a deleterious effect on the European economy. However,
Okay.
I think there will be a pushback, and there's obviously a quid pro quo here, so it's not going to be all negative.
Okay. Patti, just Errol said at the outset that, the Republican Party is the party of the working classes. The Democrat Party, as evidenced by who voted for them, is the party of the rich. But do you think the Democrats will be making hay in the competition for working class votes on who Donald Trump has surrounded himself with in the form of tech billionaires? Or rather, should I say, he hasn't surrounded himself with them. They have surrounded him freely and of their own will.
Yeah. The pay to play model, it seems. Yeah, but I think, at the core, like I said earlier, I think the premise that, Democrats, really have to rebuild that relationship with what have historically been core voting constituencies really, happens at the state and local level. It was, idealism has been part of the narrative in the Democratic message and agenda for a while, and it was not motivational to get the votes out. I do think the eyes are on, especially the smallest margin of control, in the House that the Republicans have. It's 5 seats. That's all up for play in 2 years. So, I do think any blips within, the economic performance or inflation,
Okay.
we're going to be ready to run in 2 years again, and that's really what the
That's
Democrats
your
need to
horizon.
focus on.
Okay,
Yeah.
Erol Morkoc of Republicans Abroad, who you heard before that, and Patti Shields, the last voice you heard there. Thanks very much for joining us from the US. Okay, I just want to go